Michael, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and kind of what your journey was like coming to the U.S. and now, most recently culminating in an EB5 investment?
Absolutely, Sam. Thanks for having me, and hi everyone out there. Yeah, my name is Michael, and I am originally from Germany. We moved end of 2021 from Germany to the United States with an E2 visa, because I have my company over here and in Germany. Yeah, and nearly 1 year after, we decided to go down the EB5 road. The main reason, of course, was as the E2 visa is not an immigration visa, which does not lead to a green card or to an immigration status. So the kids will age out once they turn 21, and as they loved it to be in the United States, they love their school, they love their new friends. So currently, we want to give them the opportunity to decide if they are going to stay in the United States or if they are going back to Europe or Germany. To be able to give them this opportunity, we decided to go down the EB5 route, which leads to the green card.
Got it. That's really helpful. Other than E2, did you consider any other immigration visas or routes to stay in the U.S. for them longer term, or was EB5 kind of the only thing you really seriously focused on?
So we came to the United States mainly because I have my business here, or mainly the main business, of course, is in Europe, and we wanted to extend the business to the United States. So I founded in 2019, just a couple months before the pandemic, the 100% subsidiary in Miami, and then the pandemic hit, the travel ban was in place. We weren't able to enter the States for, I think, nearly 1.5 years. So the main reason why we came to the US is to grow the business in the United States. So we never have an intention of immigrating to the United States, but after being here now since nearly 1.5 years, we found out, especially for the kids, it could be the better place for them to be and to live. And as they're pretty young right now, there are 8 and 9, so they will grow up here in the United States, and we don't want them to be forced once they turn 21 to go back to Germany or Europe or get their own visa. We want them primarily to have the option to choose if they want to stay in the States or go back to Europe. So we did not consider any other visa besides the E2 and the EB5 for the immigration part.
Got it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so obviously you came to the U.S. previously, on E2, so you're somewhat familiar on working with immigration attorneys and kind of working through the complications of the U.S. immigration system. So, can you tell us a little bit about your experience maybe working with a prior attorney on the E2, and then kind of how the EB5 attorney experience differed, and how you kind of selected the attorney that ended up helping you on the EB5 side?
Absolutely. So for the E2 visa process, we had an attorney from New York. She was German, or she still is German, and she was recommended by the German-American Chamber of Commerce. So we went the road down for the E2 with this firm in New York. It went pretty smooth. We just had to prove that I own more than 50% of the United States company, that a significant investment has been made, and at this time when we filed for the E2, we also had already our first US employees, which I think helped pretty well. Of course, due to the pandemic, the embassy in Frankfurt was pretty backed up. So it took about nearly 6 months after we filed it to get an appointment. So we got our appointment in October 21, and it went really smooth. So we got immediately our visa, and 1 week later we got our passport back with the visas in. So once I started to look for a way to stay in the United States permanently and came across through the EB5 pass, of course I reached out to my E2 attorney and asked them if they could also support with the EB5. And although they are one of the largest immigration firms, they don't deal with EB5s, and they really recommended to get an attorney which does nothing else than EB5, because EB5 is a very much different way than the E2. Just to give an example, I think the E2 file is limited to about 90 pages. 90 or 80 pages, so you are not allowed to send to the embassy more than 80 or 90 pages. Our current EB5 file was about 5,000 pages, so it's much more paperwork, especially when it comes down to the source of funds. You have to prove where the money comes from, is it legit, and so on. So it's a completely different story between the E2 and the EB5. That's why we also went with a specialized EB5 attorney, Anahita George. She was introduced to me by Sam. Before that, I had interviewed about 5, 6, 7 different companies, most of them very, very well known as immigration lawyers in the United States. And although they were pretty good, all of them, even the terms were pretty the same as with Anahita George. Anahita was super, super responsive. So when I sent her a message via WhatsApp, it took maximum 1 hour to get a reply from her. And this is what convinced me to go with Anahita George.
Got it. Got it. And how long was that process from, deciding to do EB5, hiring the attorney, and then actually submitting the application? What was that process like? How many hours of work did it require on your end, and how much interaction was there with the attorney to get everything completed?
I would split it in 2 parts. I would call the orientation phase and the execution phase. So I started looking at regional center, looking at attorneys, I think around about May, June 22. Same time, I started to reach out to Anahita George, and yeah, I call it an orientation phase. Of course, I had many questions. If there is another way than the EB5, as we are already in the country. So this process took about until October, I would say, so 3-4 months. And Anahita was really great in answering any question I had, not only regarding EB5, but also the whole process. How would it look like to be in the States, but no more under an E2 visa, on the way to the EB5? What about the travel permit? Can we leave the country during the process? And so on. So I had a lot of questions which are not directly related to the EB5 pass or the regional center, but to our current situation. So we decided to go with Anahita in mid of October. We signed the agreement, and then it took us about 6 weeks to get everything together, the documentation. We had to translate about 10 years bank statements from Germany. First, of course, we had to require them from the bank, and then to translate all of them. So it wasn't that much work. Overall, I would say about 40 to 60 hours from my side in the execution phase. Of course, the orientation phase, looking at the different regional centers, looking at the different paths, it was way longer, but I have no idea if it was 100 or 200 hours, but it was really a long process to decide which way are we gonna go.
Got it. Okay, that's really helpful. Having just gone through the process successfully and completed it, what tips, advice would you have for a new investor like yourself who's kind of thinking about hiring an EB5 attorney? Obviously, you interviewed a few different people, but yeah, other than responsiveness, what else would you give? What else would you tell someone to kind of look for when they're picking an attorney?
I think the reputation is, of course, one of the most important parts. I also found out that some regional center deal on a very different way with attorneys. There seems to be, with some regional centers, some connections to some attorneys, which may be a little bit fishy. So I would stay away from any attorney which has a direct relationship to a regional center. There are immigration attorneys out there who also help the regional center to be established, and now they're consulting the investor. So I think this can be an issue because of the different perspectives. So I would suggest to hire a really independent attorney. Responsiveness is one of the most important, and of course reputation. So although Anahita is a very small firm in comparison to all the others I interviewed, she was way the most responsive one over the others.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Okay, obviously, as you mentioned, the execution phase was, 40, 50, 60 hours maybe, but it seems like, you spent a lot more time on the kind of project research, regional center research aspect of the investment. So yeah, can you kind of, before we even get into, why you picked a certain project or regional center, kind of how did you approach that process? What was your kind of framework, when you started looking for EB5 projects in general, rural, non-rural, in a particular state, not in a particular state? What did you kind of, lay out when you started your research?
So at the very beginning, of course, there was the option to invest in my current business as a direct investment and to create those 10 plus jobs in the existing business. Another option we looked at was investing into a franchise like Chick-fil-A or Burger King or whatever, and create the jobs in this new franchise. And of course, then the regional centers. But it was a very easy decision that we are going to invest in the regional center because I have my own company. I don't have time to run a burger business as a side hustle. And also I don't want to combine or to rely on my current business for my immigration status, because if I want to go to sell my current business, I wouldn't be able to do that if it would be my EB5 investment. So I didn't want to have the direct invest in my current business, and because I wanted both things to be independent, I didn't want to invest into another direct business like Burger King or any franchise because I don't have time for that. So it pretty easily came down to the decision to go with a regional center. So then there are two different types on regional center, for my opinion. There are the ones offering a loan, or where you are offering a loan to the regional center, or the equity side. When it comes to the exit strategy, I think the equity side could be a little bit challenging because, of course, you will only get your money back if the equity is being sold to somebody else. On the opposite, with the loan, you will get your money back once the project is finished, once you have filed your I-829, and so on. So I decided to go with the loan. Yeah, and then there are not that many options, to be honest. I think there are about 5, 6, 7 regional centers out there. Some are already out of business within the last year. I looked at about 4, 5, 6 different regional centers. And the main decision why I went with Saltair was, of course, the builder, which I think is the most important part, because if the builder defaults, everything could be gone. So with Saltair being in business since 1997, I think. Is this correct, Sam?
Yes, 97.
I had a lot of old projects from them, not only EB5 project, but also regular real estate project. And I think Saltair is one of the most reliable currently. Another thing why we decided to go with Saltair is we are located in Tampa, Florida. Saltair is in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is just 30, 40 minutes drive. And I saw Saltair already before I ever met Sam, before I knew that it was an EB5 project, because we are doing a lot of trips to St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg, it's a beautiful city, and I came across Saltair, and then I found out it is an regional center too. Another very important thing is that Saltair, at the time we invested, already had 100% of all the apartments sold. Every one of the buyer had already put down a 30% non-refundable deposit, and all jobs have been created already at this time. So I think the first closings are planned to happen in fall this year. So this project is already very, very advanced. So it was a great project for us because there are, of course, there are risks, but I think the risks are pretty low.
Got it. Got it. In terms of the qualification of the project as an urban project versus a rural project, how did you kind of think through that, that difference, having already been in the U.S.? What, was that really important or not so important in your decision?
Well, as we are from Germany and not from India and China, we are not backlogged, so it doesn't make any huge difference for us if it is a urban or a rural area. So this was nothing we really considered, to be honest. So it was more important that the builder is stable, the whole project is stable and well financed. The jobs were already created. So these are the things we did take a look at. As we are already in the States, we had filed already adjustment of status. So we filed in mid of January this year, adjustment of status. We're just waiting for a travel permit. So nothing really changed for our current situation, to be very honest. We're just waiting for the travel permission and the files to be processed.
Got it. Got it. Okay. What in terms of kind of other projects that you considered and the Saltair project, were the other projects also loan projects or equity projects as well? And what aspects kind of made this project a little bit more appealing than some of the other ones that you looked at?
Yeah, I looked at several ones which were also equity. All of them I looked were all real estates, to be honest. I found some like a ferry wheel in New York or a restaurant somewhere in Georgia. So I stayed away from everything which was not real estate. Yeah, and there were several projects, one in Maryland, Saltair, Georgia one, and all of them were similar, but of course the details were different. And there was none besides the Saltair which was already that advanced, which had already created and proved the jobs, which had already sold 100% of the apartments, and especially the 30% non-refundable deposit of the buyers, I think is a great thing which lowers the risk enormously.
Obviously, researching the project and getting familiar with the differences between projects is really important, but when you're selecting an EB5 investment, part of that decision is you're entering into a long-term relationship with the EB5 Regional Center sponsoring the project. So on that side of your research, what were some of the differences between EB5AN and some of the other regional center teams that that stood out for you, or that were important in your decision to do the Saltair project?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think the most important part about a regional center is, do you think the regional center can create a job? Does it? Once you file the 829, does it qualify you for the restrictions to be waived? So you need the jobs. And of course, on the other hand side, do you trust the regional center it will be able to repay your investment? I think these are the most important things you should look at. And Saltair, it had already created the jobs. The buyers had already put down 30% non-refundable deposit, and 100% of the apartments were sold. So I think Solitaire is a great project, which very low risk, but of course still some risk, to qualify for A, being able to repay, B, for creating the jobs. Because I think the worst thing which can happen is the regional center is not able to create the jobs. You will not get your restrictions removed, and your investment is gone. I heard about some investment in New York where friends of mine invested, and exactly this happened. They didn't get back yet their investment, and the project was stopped. I think you should take a look at both things. So jobs creation, does it lead to the goal of the green card? And of course, how are the odds that you get your investment back?
Yep. How important was independence with respect to the regional center from the builder, from the developer? Was that really important to you, or only a little bit important, you know, kind of as you were doing your comparison across projects?
To be very honest, I think the builder is much more important than the regional center. Because if the builder defaults, if the builder cannot build the project, if the builder cannot pay back the loan, yeah. So yeah, Solitaire being that long in the business, having such a great record, was really one huge point which helped us to make the decision to go with Solitaire.
Got it. Okay, perfect. And I guess just kind of high level, you know, having just gone through the process, you know, very deeply over the last few months, you know, what advice would you give to another, you know, investor who is just kind of starting the process in a similar, you know, situation as you? You know, what would you advise them? What would you tell them, you know, to focus on, and, you know, as they kind of started to look at, you know, making an investment themselves?
I would start with the decision, loan or equity. Both have their upsides or downsides. Next thing, I would start narrow it down by the builder or the company behind the regional, not the regional center, but behind the project. And once, probably 2 or 3 regional centers will be left, once you narrow it down by these 2 points, take a very good look at the contracts, at if there is a senior loan, at the loan agreement with between the builder and the senior lender, and of course it comes back to the 2 points: jobs and return of investment. As more advanced the project is, I think is better are the odds that the jobs will definitely be created. If it is a very early stage project, a lot of things can happen. We saw a lot of things happen due to the pandemic, which we never thought of to be possible at all. Yeah, and I think that's the main part. Narrow it down from loan to equity, or loan equity. Take a look at the builder, take a look at the senior loan agreement, take a look at the regional center, of course. How is it structured? How's the loan structured? How are the terms? When will you get paid back your investment, and so on? Yeah, and then good luck.